Hi, everyone. Welcome to Lurking for Legends. We are a live video cast that speaks with people from all walks of the publishing world. My co host Christy Stratos, David M. Kelly, and myself encourage viewers to chime in with questions for our guests or simply comment on what you hear on the show. And tonight, in the hopes of expanding our readership, we're officially live streaming not only to Facebook, but also to Twitch and YouTube. So this is the first time for Looking for Legends. We're 60 episodes in, and we're trying to broaden our viewership. So hopefully everything will go smooth. And that being said, please bear with us as we may experience a few growing pains along the way. Anyway, tonight is a special night for Looking for Legends, as we will have three amazing science fiction authors to co-read an excerpt from one of their stories. So please help me welcome in studio tonight Pearl Buchanan, Kate Sheeran Swed, and Aaron Frail. Welcome, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
So before we get started, I'm going to put each of you in the spotlight and have you tell us a bit about yourself. Not necessarily about the story we're going to read tonight, but just about yourself in general and what you've been doing, and tell us a little bit about your book. So Pearl, we'll start with you.
Me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm a grandmother, a great-grandmother. Right now, I'm writing a sequel to the book that I'm going to read the excerpt from first. I write a sequel to that one. And I'm writing a sequel to another book I have called Soa. And actually, I'm writing a lot of stuff right now. And I'm going to concentrate just on this one right here, though. First, it'll be the second first, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And I, what else do you need to know about me?
Oh, whatever you want to tell us. Just
Uh,
yeah, you write science fiction and
I write science fiction and fantasy and a teensy bit of horror. And uh, I'm retired. I retired in 2009 from AT&T. I was an electronics tech,
awesome.
and yeah, and that was an interesting job. That was one of the jobs that I had with that company. I had several. Um, and I live in North Carolina, which is in the south of, so to speak. And that's about it. That's about me. I have three kids. I have two daughters and a son, three granddaughters, and five great grandchildren.
Wow, you're a busy woman.
I try.
Well, that's awesome, and I think the neat thing about you, Pearl, is you're like me. We publish our books late and later on in our life, not like
Yeah.
so. And I think a lot of that has to do with the advent of Amazon and being able to self-publish and stuff like that. So I always tell would-be authors that it's never too late to write your book. So don't fret. I published mine when I was 52, so there's
Yeah.
lots of time to do it.
I self-published because I felt like if I waited to get an agent and all that good stuff, I'd be dead by then. So
Yeah, no
I
doubt.
figured it's best to go on ahead and do it now.
Hmm.
And so yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, so and how about sorry, thanks, Pearl, and how about you, Kate?
Hi, I am Kate, and I live up in Albany, New York, so a bit north of Pearl. I write science fiction and occasionally some fantasy. Sometimes, depending on who you ask, I have a superhero series that's sort of Marvel style, and I think of it as sci-fi, but it tends to get the fantasy readers excited too. So tonight, I'm reading about from a new space opera series that just launched last week, actually. So it's brand new and lots of humor and hijinks and shenanigans and just general fun, Firefly style, I guess. So I'm happy to
Awesome.
be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for coming. It's a lot of fun to have you guys on. So, and Aaron, how about yourself?
Yeah, I'm Aaron Frail, and I currently live in Montana in the mountains. And I, write mainly sci-fi and comedy. I have a series called Time Burrito, which is about a guy traveling through time trying to make the perfect burrito. And another series, Touristic You, that's more serious that I'm reading tonight. And then I'm currently trying to work on a fantasy series that I'm calling My 3-Year-Old is a Barbarian and Other Parenting Problems. That is sort of the premise of that is a 3-year-old gets stuck in a barbarian's body and the mom gets stuck in halfling and hijinks ensue. That one, it's still in its kind of infant stages. I have some stuff out on like Kindle Vella that I have been testing the waters with, but yeah, mainly comedy, with a few exceptions here and there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So unless you have any questions, I think we'll just start into the live read. And we're going to start with Pearl. We've got her up first, and we're going to be reading from the book first by Pearl Cannon. I'm going to be the narrator, and the characters will be read. Pearl's going to read Lissa, and Aaron's going to read Triquan. Sorry, we went through this, and I messed it up early. And Kate's going to read Mags, and David is going to read Aaron. So I'll let you take it away, Pearl.
Okay, I'm just going to read the setup here.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. 16-year-old Lissa Brunner resents that her parents never told her that they came from another planet until she finds out when she's almost kidnapped by minions of the ruler of that world. Still in danger of being taken, she has been forbidden to leave her house without people that can protect her, which include her father and mother. She has a crush on Traquan Havelock. He's the captain of the football team. And though she's usually an obedient teen, when he calls and asks her to meet him in a nearby park, her anger at her parents causes her to sneak out of the house. Well, she's 16. She hopes that he's going to ask her to go to the upcoming concert with him. Traquan knows she likes him, but does not reciprocate the sentiment. He has an ulterior motive for contacting her. He takes her to a McDonald's where she leaves her cell phone on the table to go to the restroom. When she returns, she catches him trying to go through her phone.
So that's awesome. That's the setup, and then we're just going to jump right into an excerpt from first by Pearl Buchanan.
Okay. You're trying to look at my contacts, aren't you?
Lissa wasn't stupid, just a naive 16-year-old with a crush. But now, that blind spot she had when it came to Triquan grabbed itself a pair of glasses, and she stared at him with clearing sight. He glanced at the list of contacts that opened, and it was gibberish overlaid by a small blinking white box. He stared in consternation, then eyed her, one eyebrow going out.
Let me guess, you're after Mags' number, aren't you?
Her face tight, she reached over and snatched the phone from him.
For your information, all my data, including contact numbers, are encrypted. Unless you have the key, it won't do you a bit of good to look.
He cursed to himself. How was he to know she was that much of a nerd? She really secured her cell phone. He thought,
the only thing she didn't do was fix it, so her thumbprint is needed.
Her face still tight, she added,
furthermore, if you manage to get past the key, you still can't get in because then you need my thumbprint.
Oh, she put that in too,
was his sour thought. Irritated at getting caught, Triquan discarded all pretense and fell back on a plan he'd thought of earlier, but had decided was unnecessary. He leaned back and regarded her with narrowed eyes and frowned.
Look, give me your number, and I won't tell Ethan you came with me.
Her face began to redden as she stared at him in disbelief and anger.
So tell him. He already knows I wanted to go out with you. Did you think I was going to keep it a secret if we went out together?
She shoved the phone into her pocket and spun around, heading for the door. Triquan mumbled another curse under his breath and jumped up to follow her. Outside, as she bypassed his car and went down across the parking lot to the sidewalk, he called.
Hey, wait up. Let me explain.
He was trying to think, to salvage what he could of the situation. He considered himself a good talker and thought he still might be able to come up with something, but in this case, he'd badly miscalculated. She'd spun around and glared up at him.
You don't have to explain anything to me, Traquan. I should have known you weren't interested in me. All you want to do is use me to get to Mags.
Against her will, tears began to form, and she turned away from him. He caught up to her. He actually felt kind of bad, but mostly he was sorry he didn't get what he wanted. He tried to give it one last shot. He took her arm, looking down at her with the most contrite face he could muster, and adopted a tone that worked for him before under similar circumstances.
Look here. I'm sorry, Lisa. Tell you what, why don't we forget about this little mix up and start over again? My bad. I should have tried to not play you like that. I still want to take you out.
He shot her his trademark dazzling smile.
We can go to a movie or something.
She peered up at him, her face red and tear-streaked. She was incredulous.
Mix up? Is that what you call it? Faking that you want me to go, faking that you like me so you can go through my phone and steal the number of my friend, Traquan Havelock. I wouldn't go out with you now if Jesus told me to. Mags was right. You're bad news, and good luck trying to get her to go anywhere with you. Goodbye, and don't you ever speak to me again.
She snatched her arm away from him and took off down the street, almost at a run.
Wait, come back and get in the car, girl. I'll take you home. You don't have to walk.
She shook her head, and in the closest she'd ever come to profanity, held her left arm straight up and snapped her middle finger up in a time-honored gesture. She kept walking. Traquan shrugged, watching her rapid retreat down the sidewalk. He sighed, shaking his head and dismissing Lissa from his mind. Now he had to come up with another way to get to Mags. And there's a bit of a break in the story here, so I imagine the time's elapsed here. So Lissa cried hot, silent tears as she walked. She was hurt, but she was also mad at Traquan for being such a deceitful, lying, obnoxious jerk, and at herself for being so stupid. How could she not have seen how he was? Mags warned her, and she should have listened. She couldn't believe she thought she was in love with such a despicable, arrogant donkey. She looked up to see where she was and how best to get back home. She hoped she could get there before her father found out she was gone. She felt bad about sneaking out, but then anger at her parents hit her again, and she started down the quiet street that she knew to be a shortcut back to the park. Though she tried not to think about it, to sublimate what she had learned about her family and herself, and pretend everything was fine, the fact remained that they'd been lying to her all her life, and now she was a virtual prisoner in her own house, through no fault of hers. Her whole life had been an illusion, and now what she thought was going to be the beginning of something good with a guy she was dying to get to notice her was actually nothing but another sorry mirage. And to think she actually hoped he was going to ask her to go out with him to the Signs of the Time concert coming in late May, things couldn't possibly get any worse. And then they did. And there's a bit of a time here. As she hurried along, Lissa hauled her phone out of her pocket and used a trembling finger to press the fast code for Meg's number. Meg's picked up right off.
Hey, Lissa, how's it going, girl?
Came her cheerful greeting. Lissa broke into sobs.
Oh, Mags, you were right.
She wailed. Megs was instantly alert.
What's wrong? Where are you? And why are you crying?
Lissa blubbered.
You were so right about Traquan.
Traquan, what did he do?
Lissa reached a dirt path that led through a wooded area where she could come out at another street. There she could make a left and walk another 2 blocks to the park behind her house. As she started down the path and tried to collect herself enough to tell Megs what happened, she sensed a motion, a shadowed movement overhead. She looked up and caught the telltale sweetish scent that she had missed in her agitation. She screamed as Zormot landed almost on top of her. The Zormot, along with 3 others of its kind, had been hanging around as close to her house as they could get, patiently waiting. It saw her leave the park with Traquan and followed them. It wasn't the first time it followed her, but it hoped that since she wasn't with any of her usual protectors this time, it would get a chance to grab her. Using its ability to glide, it kept to rooftops and trees along the way, its pale figure hard to see against the bright spring sky, and was watching from across the street atop the roof of a car. When Lissa came out of the McDonald's and hurried off down the street on foot, it followed and made its move when she headed through the woods. It clapped its hand over her mouth, effectively cutting off her panic-stricken shrieks, and popped something into her open mouth. It held her in one pallid, cold arm as it ignored her kicking. She gagged for a fraction of a second before the drug-infused capsule broke open and the quick-acting anesthetic rushed into her system, knocking her out cold. The Zormot gathered her up, tossed her limp body over its shoulder, and placed a teleport ring over a particular empty space on the ground. It pointed a wand-like device at it, and the ring expanded. It stepped into the nexus that would take them to Nybury, and they disappeared from the face of the earth. Behind them, on the side of the now empty path, where it flew from her hand, lay Lissa's phone. Mag's frantic voice yelled, wanting to know what was wrong, what was going on, and of course, getting no answer. Bit of time passes. Mag stared at her silent phone with rising dread. She quickly clicked it and tried calling Lissa back, and got her voice message telling her to
Say it, now I'll call you back.
Thinking fast, she called the landline at Lissa's house.
Uncle Aaron,
She said without preamble when he picked up and greeted her.
something's wrong with Lissa. She called me crying and then she screamed. Now I can't get her back on the line.
What? I haven't heard anything. She's in her room, I think. Hang on.
He bounded up the stairs, taking the phone with him. He tapped at Lissa's door, then threw it open. He stared into the empty room, beginning to feel decidedly uneasy.
How long ago did you talk to her, Magdalene?
Megs knew he was getting upset because he never said her full name, unless he was.
A few minutes ago, sir. She said something about Traquan before she screamed.
While Mags was talking, Aaron was searching the house, but with a terrible feeling he wasn't going to find Lissa. He paused.
Do you have a number for Traquan?
He needed to speak to the boy.
No, sir, but Ethan does. I'll call him and then I'll call you back.
She clicked off. Aaron gave up a search of the house as a waste of time, because by then he was certain she'd sneaked out. He called Nisi to tell her their daughter was missing. Mags called back with Traquan's cell phone number, and Aaron called him.
This is Lissa's father. Where is she?
He asked as politely as he could when the boy answered.
I know she left the house without my permission to meet with you. She has not returned, and if she is not with you, then I wish to know if you can tell me where she is.
With worry, his accent thickened and his voice deepened. Traquan, on his way to the mall by then, didn't even try to lie and say he hadn't seen her when he heard Aaron's voice, though this was his initial thought. In fact, fear shot through him, and somehow he knew he'd better not lie. And anyway,
I didn't do nothing wrong.
he thought, but he got real respectful.
Lissa, I don't know, Mr. Burner. She came to meet me to the Mickey D's, but she wouldn't let me bring her back home. She left there walking.
He felt defensive, and of course he omitted what he tried to do. He didn't think it was relevant. And besides, it wasn't his fault she walked off like that. He offered to take her back to the park, didn't he? To his relief, Aaron didn't ask him anything about why they were together. Instead, he wanted to know which McDonald's and in what direction Lissa headed. After getting that information, Aaron was pretty sure he wasn't going to get anything else from the boy, and Traquan was going.
Didn't she come back home?
When he hung up on him, he wasn't trying to be rude. He simply felt he didn't have time to waste on politeness. His daughter was missing, and he had the horrible feeling he knew what happened to her. He didn't bother with castigating himself for not knowing she'd left the house. He'd do that later. Right now, he had to find her and bring her home. And that is the end of the excerpt by Pearl Buchanan from the book called First. That was awesome. Good job, guys.
Thanks,
So,
everyone.
That was fun. Okay, so I'm going to set up for Kate. And this, let me pull Kate's up here. And Kate book, we're going to read from Kate's book called Chaos Zone. And the narrator will be Kate. Pearl will be playing the character Sloan. David will be playing the character Bro and AI, Artificial Intelligence. Aaron will be playing the role of Hilda, and I will be playing the role of Alex. So go ahead, Kate. We'll let you take it away, and you can set it up for us.
Great. Okay, so the setup is that Sloan Tarnish is a would-be bounty hunter whose ship is too damaged to deliver the last bounty she collected. So she's actually dragging her crew along on an illegal bounty hunt on a very unpleasant planet.
Awesome. And as you're the narrator, Kate, you kick us off whenever you are ready to go.
Okay, sounds good. It wasn't that Sloan had expected an illegal bounty to be hiding out in a pleasant spot. She couldn't have hoped to pick them up at a Lux station in the Bone System. There were no Lux stations in the Bone System that she knew of, or a penthouse apartment. Still, she thought it was fair to wish for a bit less mud. Calcornum was the second rock from Aju, the system star, though Sloane thought the word rock might be giving the planet a bit too much credit. Every step left her ankle deep in mud, and as thankful as she was for her knee-high boots, she suspected this muck would soak through them soon enough. Worse than that, the place smelled like a garbage heap full of rotten fruit, with a generous dose of sulfur added in for good measure. The air was thick and muggy, and the foul smells curdled on the back of her tongue with every breath she took. She brought both Alex and Hilda along for this particular adventure, leaving Brighton in Bro's care, which didn't seem like the best idea, but there wasn't much she could do about it. She needed people on the ground with her, especially for a job like this one. Alex and Hilda were both muttering under their breaths as they followed her through the jungle. She couldn't really blame them for that.
Don't worry.
Sloane said.
I'm going to raise both your salaries.
As soon as she could pay them for anything, she would.
Save my cuts for Vincent's rescue fund.
Hilda said.
He can pay me back later.
With interest, Sloane assumed.
Calcornum was never transformed.
Bro informed her as she struggled her way through the jungle. She'd fitted a button-sized bud into her ear so the AI could advise her, though so far it had only offered tour guide level facts about the place.
It was always like this. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, fabulous.
Sloane said.
Do you have a dial back feature on the exclamation point?
No.
I'm laughing at my own writing. It was the way you read it. Sorry. The bounty posting Bro had lifted from the Fox Clan databases was very particular about locating the target on Calcornum, even providing approximate coordinates. Sloane had to admit that she hadn't seen all that many bounties in the short life of her career so far, but the ones she had seen never specified a location, hence the need for a hunter to do the work. But this was an illegal bounty and a whole different game. Besides, she could understand why someone with tokens to spare might hire out a job like this instead of enduring a festering boil of a planet like Calcornum. Even the trees looked sick, each of them littered with human-sized leaves that dragged their branches toward the ground. More like pods than leaves, actually, some of them dripping a pus-like substance into the mud.
Why would this guy come here with a load of stolen data chips?
Sloane asked.
It seems like the humidity would damage the tech.
Maybe he stashed them somewhere else and he's hiding out here.
Hilda stepped around a fallen chunk of one of the leaf pods, carefully avoiding the puddle of pus that pooled all around it.
Bro, can you see if there are any communication signals leaving the planet from this area?
Sloane asked.
Maybe he's going to meet with a buyer.
What else would he do with all those data chips? There had to be thousands of potential buyers in the galaxy, people who would pass the chips through criminal networks or change up their coding so they looked legitimate. She'd get into that game herself if she could figure out how.
No communication signals.
Bro
Wait,
said.
there is one. It's right near where you are. Oh, that is you. Apologies.
Hilda sighed. Sloane pushed a pair of leaf pods aside, struggling past the tree and into a clearing that was carpeted in a thick layer of sickly green moss. A ring of tall grasses encircled the clearing, as if it meant to spring a trap. Ahead, the jungle thickened again and led up a steep hill. She squinted, using her sleeve to wipe stinging sweat out of her eyes. At the top of the hill, she could make out a black-sided tower looming ominously over the jungle. It ended in a jagged spire, though, the stone crumbling away.
Is that a tower?
Yes,
Bro said.
those are the Calcornum ruins. No one knows what was here when it was built, but the stone has been dated back 1,000 years. Isn't that amazing?
On another day, the almost art history major in Sloane might have wanted to dig into the jungle or rocket up the hill to check out the ruins. Maybe there'd been a city here, some ancient hub of civilization. Maybe it had been here long before they'd been able to connect with the rest of the galaxy or even the system. Maybe long before the Bone System had fallen under the rule of tyranny. On another day, she'd have her flip tab out and she'd be asking Bro to tell her everything it could find. Today, she just wanted to collect this guy, his name was Jackson Bellow according to the posting, and get the hell off this planet.
Yeah,
Sloane said.
so I bet he's there. Good vantage point. Is there any chance you could get a read on those chips?
Yes,
Bro said.
there are enabled data chips in the ruins, hundreds of them.
Hilda grunted.
The guy didn't even disable the chips. Sloan, either is a complete amateur or this is some kind of trap.
If it was a trap, it was too late. They were already here. Jackson Bellow was a turncoat factory employee with no criminal record. She could imagine a person like that being inept at criminal undertakings or getting caught in a blackmail situation. Not that she planned to play the hero here.
Let's hope it's the first.
Sloane said.
Come on, this is going to be easy.
Something struck her hard in the back, and she fell face forward into the mud. If it had smelled bad before, it was absolutely rancid as it oozed up her nostrils. She twisted, flailing for her pistol, but her hands were slippery and the gun went flying.
Move!
Hilda shouted, and Sloane scrambled through the mud as something large and squelchy thundered behind her. She stumbled to her feet, nearly losing her footing again as she risked a glance back over her shoulder. The thing that had hit her in the back looked like a huge, slimy log that suddenly decided to go for a stroll. A slimy log with slimy wings that it now extended as it staggered around like a colt testing its legs. At its feet, or the base of the log since she didn't see any feet, one of the heavy leaves from the tree had cracked open. The leaves weren't leaves, and they weren't pods either. They were cocoons, and one of them had birthed this thing, whatever it was. To either side, its brothers writhed in their cocoons, ready to break free. The first monster sprang into the trees and started rustling around, dragging its drenched wings through the actual foliage. Drying them? Scratching an itch? Sloane didn't realize she'd stopped moving to gape until Alex's fingers closed around her arm to drag her across the rest of the clearing and into the jungle ahead. It was hard to say what good that would do, but the monster was still crackling those curdled wings against the tree, so it was as good a plan as any. Leaving her pistol in the mud, Sloane fled after Alex, who'd picked up a stick at some point. It looked like a cousin to the cocoon monster, and looked ready to impale it if she had to, only Sloane wasn't convinced any stick would break that thing's carapace.
Bro,
Sloane said, breathing hard as she started up the jungle-enclosed incline toward the ruins.
what are those things?
No idea.
Bro answered cheerfully.
Alex?
By all means, let's stop to perform a full analysis. I have to remind you that I'm not a biologist. I'm an astrophysicist.
A branch struck Sloane across the forehead, and she lost her footing, landing on her ass in the mud. She kicked uselessly as the slop soaked into her pants, until Hilda wheeled back to offer her a hand. By now, though, the slime monster had crossed the clearing in two pumps of its massive wings. It followed them straight into the trees, its log face gaping. It was still dripping with cocoon pus.
I think we smell like something it wants to eat.
Sloane said.
And that's the end of it. I think, Dave, you need to get something to eat next time before you come on here. We can hear your stomach from here. So I just want, before we go on any further, I'm just going to show these comments. And Pearl, I'm not sure if you've seen that. Looks like your daughter saw you here.
Hi, Mom.
Didn't know you'd be on Twitch too.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that is my daughter.
Wanda January is so much fun listening to all of you. CJ Davidson loving the sound effects. That's David's stomach.
The
The props are right, that's for sure. And then that is so nasty. I think they're talking about that creature we found in the trees.
That's my youngest daughter.
That's awesome. She's probably thinking, just like my kids would too, like, especially if I went on TikTok, they'd probably have a stroke themselves. Like, what's an old guy like you doing on TikTok or Twitch or something?
Yeah.
For sure. Okay, that was awesome, Kate. Thank you for that. And now we'll switch over to Aaron for our third and final reading for tonight. And this is, and I'm going to screw the name up. We go over this before we even come online, and I've only got one word to say, and it's Pterostecu.
Touristic you.
I knew I screwed up. Pterostecu, yeah, by Aaron Frail. So, Aaron, go ahead and take it away. Set it up. Oh, Aaron's going to be the narrator. Kate's going to play Cal, who's half human, half Niagara. I never went over these words. So.
Nigramodian.
Okay. And she doesn't know it yet, but there is a chance that either, here's the word, you have to say that too.
Mackie Arnek.
Or Sarge is her father, as both had relations with her mom around the same time of her conception. Dave's going to play Mackie Arnek. British upper class accent, comes from a wealthy family, captain of. So, Dave, do you think you can pull off a British accent?
I think I'm being typecast.
An enforcer fleet sent to bring Sarge back to prison wearing power armor, so Cal thinks he's a fabled demon called Pterostecu. I'm always going to screw that up. I can't even say square SpongeBob pants. I never get that.
SpongeBob SquarePants.
I should have just named them the Square Pants.
Pearl's going to play Set, Cal's mom, nurse Mackie Arnek. And we discussed this before that no one else would have to say that name but Aaron, but I took it over. Sorry. And Sarge back to health when their ship crash landed on the planet during the planet's wars. Had intimate relations with both that led to Sarge and that fellow being kicked out of the village. Aaron's going to play that fellow as a soldier, a human in their power armor. Their voice sounds like a growl, and I'm going to play her, Cal's childhood friend enemy. Since she's half human and weak compared to other teens her age, Per is jealous of her, thinks people play too much attention to her. And so you go ahead with the setup, Aaron, and then you can just jump right into it. I guess our first.
Damn, my colors changed. That's going to confuse the hell out of me.
Whenever you're ready, Aaron, take it away.
Cool. So yeah, the setup is essentially. Cal, to prove to her village that she's not weak, she takes it upon herself to build a cabin out in the woods, and she meets a strange star species named Sarge, who calls himself a human, and they kind of work out this deal where she gives him food and he helps her build this cabin, and he also seems to be very interested about knowledge in the area. And, they kind of develop a father-daughter relationship during the building of this cabin, and he gives her this valuable blinking red stone. The next morning after she receives that stone, a feared race called the Touristicus descends upon her village looking for Sarge. So she, she's just heard of these demons that come from the sky. So that's kind of where we start, where the captain or the Touristicus have rounded up all the villagers into the town square. And I'll just let you take it from here. So
awesome. Kate, you're up first.
Okay. I need to go to my house,
Cal said.
To get me the prisoner?
Asked the leader.
I have something at my home. It will help you.
Show me.
The creature's voice lightened, but it was still a growl by comparison to the villagers. It nodded, and two soldiers grabbed Cal, dragging her towards her home. Her mom screamed.
Cal, no!
A soldier hit her mom with the butt of his fire club. Cal winced at the scene. She almost cried out. She wanted to save her mom, but knew she had to be strong. She let the soldiers drag her away and left her mother heaving in the grass. Sometime later, the soldiers tossed Cal into her family home with no comparison. Who wrote this thing? With no compassion. Darn that writer. Anyways, the soldiers tossed Cal into her family with no compassion in their eyes. More and more, Cal understood why her father left to fight the Touristicus. Even though members of her village hated violence, these creatures were a menace. There had to be situations where violence was warranted. Cal vowed that if she made it out alive, she would join her father's fight. "You have 2 minutes," one of the soldiers said as he pointed his fire club towards Cal. She scrambled into the kitchen and pried open the loose floorboard. It came up with ease, and Cal reached inside for the stone. The Touristicus aimed their weapons at her. She pulled out the object and displayed it to the soldiers. The pair glanced at each other, and one moved to swipe it. Cal yanked it away.
I will only give it to your leader.
Well, why don't we kill you and take it for ourselves? One soldier retorted.
How will you explain that to your boss? He doesn't seem to be very forgiving.
The soldiers considered what she had said. Without another word, they dragged her from the house. She held tightly to the stone, knowing it would be her salvation. Sarge would never let her down. And then a little bit of time later, the two soldiers push Cal down at the leader's feet. She had a face full of grass, but still managed to clutch the stone to her breast. The leader stared down wordlessly and lifted the prize up. His head cocked at the sight of the object. He tore it from Cal's hand.
Where did you get this?
He barked.
You can have it, but you must leave my village and never return.
Cal said. Her mother broke free from the crowd.
Cal, don't! You don't know what you're saying. Don't listen to her.
I don't like to repeat myself. Where did you get this?
The leader's voice lowered to a deep, terrible growl.
You have the stone. There are no others like it. Leave us.
Cal said. She knew it was time for courage. The beast was greedy, just like the Tristicue legends. She had to be firm. The Tristicue leader pointed his fire club at her mother and pulled the trigger. Cal screamed as a red ball of flame tore through her mother's head, falling to her knees as her mom's smoldering form dropped to the grass. Cal cratered the charred corpse that had been her mother. The crowd of villagers gasped and screamed. Cal head towards the creature. Her eyes narrowed. The two soldiers held Cal back as she struggled towards him, bellowing with rage. Perhaps it was the part of her father that dwelled within her. Most of the villagers cowered with fear, while bloodlust filled Cal's heart. The leader had turned the Thunder Club towards Cal when one of her forest brothers, poor Etal, stepped forward.
I know where she got it. She got it from the man in the woods. I followed her one day after her story and saw the man. The man is a star species.
Purr's two fathers and mother pleaded for him to stay. The soldiers silenced them with their fire clubs.
Can you take me to him?
The leader asked.
Yes, Cal made a cabin for him. I know where it is.
Excellent. Let this be a lesson to anyone who attempts to defy our orders. Things go smoothly when you listen. Mots die when you don't. Bring the bitch, watch the others. No one leave the town square until I get back.
A few soldiers grabbed Purr and Cal. They placed a box on Cal's wrist that produced beams of light binding her hands together. Another contraption was put on Purr. The soldiers pushed Cal and Purr forward, and the leader brought up the rear. Cal began to formulate a plan to warn Sarge. Sometime later, the group approached the hill that hid the cabin from view. Cal had learned a few things about her enemy on the journey through the woods. They didn't seem to be as flexible or as fast. Their hulking bodies slowed them down, but they didn't seem to fatigue. Cal also knew that they possessed amazing strength. If she were to break away from the group, she would have to use speed and smarts. She saw a patch of foliage that would be too dense for the Tristicues, as even Purr would struggle through it. Cutting through the area would be a shortcut to the cabin. Cal could cross the side of the hill rather than climb to the top like the Tristicues would be forced to do. Once she was close to the bushes, she darted from the group.
After her!
The leader roared. Two blasts of the fire clubs exploded the trees around her before she slid into the foliage. The Tristicues stopped pursuing her after they discovered they couldn't hack through as fast as she could wiggle through. For once, her fragile form was an advantage. Cal bolted towards the cabin, her hands still bound by the beams of light. She stumbled through the trees and made it to the front door in no time.
Sarge! Sarge!
Cal yelled as she burst inside. The main room was empty. Sarge had picked a lousy time to go on a hunting trip.
Sarge!
She looked through the cabin, inside and out. There was no sign of the man. Furthermore, there was no evidence that he had ever lived in the place. All his possessions were gone. The only clues that a human had occupied were some ashes in the cooking fire and the human-sized furniture. Cal had no time to contemplate his disappearance. The Tristicues burst through the door. Upon seeing the empty cabin, the leader screamed with rage and shattered the table and the chairs. He kicked the cooking pot from the fireplace, pointed his fire club at the bed, and fired. He turned towards Cal and dragged her outside by the hair. She kicked and punched, but the Tristicu's skin was cold to the touch and as tough as tree bark. He tossed Cal into the dirt outside the cabin. She choked on the dust. She noticed Purr's body at the top of the hill. They must have shot him in the back as soon as they saw the place. Cal's anger boiled as the image of her mother replayed in her mind. She hated the Turisticus and was powerless to stop them. She wished her father would return. She wanted to learn the ways of the warrior. Instead, she would die face down in the dirt, crying over her dead mother. Recalling when her mom offered to comfort her, Cal regretted not accepting. She heard the lumbering clomp of the Turisticu's feet behind her. Cal knew she would be struck down by fire, just like Purr, but nothing happened. She was slumped over with her back to the Tristicu. She trembled for the longest time as the leader circled and lifted her head, forcing her to gaze into the deep abyss the Turisticus called eyes.
Do you know what this is?
The leader asked as he showed Cal the stone.
It's money.
Cal sputtered.
Sarge told me all about money.
No, it's a tracking device. It is surgically implanted into all prisoners.
But Sarge,
Sarge lied to you. But I'll tell you what, I'll go easy on you because I bet it's the first time anyone has ever lied to you. Besides, I don't like destroying beauty.
The leader of Cal lifted her to her feet and pushed her towards the hill.
Torche!
He said, and one soldier pulled a rock from his belt. He pulled a pin from the device and lobbed it into the cabin. Seconds later, the structure exploded in brilliant blaze. Cal felt the heat of flames on her back as the leader dragged her forward. Sometime later, they reached the outskirts of the village. Cal could see all the people huddled in the town square. Most of them were sitting and waiting. The earlier panic had transformed into a nervous unrest. The soldiers were no longer pointing their fire clubs. The leader turned to them, giving an order in a language Cal couldn't understand, and the translator wouldn't translate. As the soldiers moved to comply with the orders, he said,
I like your bravery and tenacity. You stepped up in a way that most Mots don't. I've been on this rock for a while now, and every Mot I meet is a pushover. You could rape their daughter in front of them, and they'll forgive you for it. Not that I condone rape. There have to be limits, or your troops won't respect you.
Cal's blood began to boil. She wanted nothing more than to slit the Turisticu's throat, but she was powerless. She doubted a mere knife would pierce his tough skin, and wrestling a fire club out of his hand wouldn't work either.
You're unlike your Mot friends.
The leader continued.
You've got the spark. I saw it in your eye, so I'm going to give you a chance.
The leader gave the soldiers a nod, and they turned towards the gathered crowd and opened fire. The fire clubs blazed with fury as fireballs made no distinction between old, sick, weak, man, woman, or child. Cal rushed forward, but the leader held her back. The villagers screamed in terror as they dropped from the barrage of flame one by one until no one was left standing. Cal wailed and fought, attempting to struggle free, desperate to save the villagers.
Most Mots fear death, yet you run towards it.
The leader pondered. Cal collapsed to the ground, choking on her tears.
You can't do anything for them.
He continued.
They harbored a fugitive of the law, and the penalty for harboring a fugitive is death.
The massacre was followed by the explosive stones being thrown into the houses and onto the pile of bodies. Blast rocked the homes. Debris tore through the village. The skin of the Turisticus seemed to protect them. The flames devoured everything. Soon the whole town was an inferno. Cal had no more tears. She mourned for her mother and her forest brothers and sisters and forced the image of every villager into her mind. She wanted to remember their faces.
I told you that I would do you a favor.
The leader said.
And since you were helpful and cooperated, I'm going to have your sentence commuted. You will serve out a natural life term in prison. And think about it this way. When I catch Sarge, and I will catch Sarge, he'll join you, and you will get your chance at revenge.
Heat from a burning village caused sweat to pour from her brow. Cal vowed herself that she would get her revenge. But it wasn't Sarge she would be after. A Tristicu soldier placed its fist on her neck. A needle slid from its forearm and injected her with a burning liquid. She felt woozy and tumbled into a deep sleep where she would relive the tragedy again and again.
Awesome. Well done. So
All right.
I have to ask Dave, your sound effects, your ray gun, is that like from Flash Gordon and from 1945 or what?
It's pretty amazing.
Could be, yeah.
Like the old ray gun. Certainly doesn't sound like a Star Wars blaster. So we have a couple more comments came in while we were going through this one, and CJ is saying these excerpts are great to hear. Could you post links to their websites or ways to connect? We'll try to get that in there in a little bit. I was trying to do that behind the scenes here, but I was having trouble finding the sites while I was listening at the same time. And then we have another one, sound effects, enjoyment and fun. So I guess we should have warned you guys beforehand that Dave plays sound effects in the background. That's the fun. Black Betty 12. And I hope she's talking about one of the characters in the story.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah.
Dave's ray gun wasn't that bad. Come on.
No.
And Wanda, great job, everyone. And it was a lot of fun. We really enjoyed doing these. We do them the first Tuesday of every month. So if anyone ever wants to come on here, let us know. And when we do a theme for that, like genre, then we'll invite those authors in. So, that last character. So we're getting some clarification. Okay,
yeah.
good. Phew.
That's my daughter.
Yeah, I was getting worried there. Yeah.
That's my daughter. She didn't like that last character. Didn't like him.
He's a bad guy.
We wouldn't let her know that you live in Sudbury, Dave, anyway, so don't worry about it.
Yeah, thanks.
So I'm just going to switch screens here. Sci-fi we're going to get into. And so what I want to do just before we leave, so we generally run 45 minutes. We're beyond that, and that's fine. Everyone loved your stories and stuff. Let's start with Pearl again. And where can we find your books if we want to read them further?
Well, I'm at Amazon and Smashwords and Barnes and Noble. I'm at all of the normal, regular ebook sites, and Amazon has my paperbacks. This particular one is in paperback.
And what name are they looking for? Pearl B. Cannon?
P.B. Cannon.
Okay, perfect.
P.B. Cannon, and this particular novel is called First.
Awesome. And how about you, Kate?
Best way would probably be to go to my website. That's katesheeranswed.com. So it's just my name, but without the spaces, and then .com. And then you can find the links. I'm on all the stores, so I'm wide. I have Amazon, Kobo, Apple, and paperback and ebook.
Perfect. And you see in the background, that's Dave actually doing that. He's a lot more savvy at putting these things in there. So as we're talking, Dave will hopefully get some of the sites in there so people can actually click on the links. And that's great, Kate. And how about you, Aaron?
You could go to aaronfrail.com, and there's actually a free book on there, so you could click free book and get a free book.
Cool.
But Amazon, if you look for Aaron Frail on Amazon, you could find them all there too. So
if you go to Books to Read or mine, you can find them all there.
Awesome. That's great. And that was a lot of fun, guys and girls. When I say guys, it's funny because you can't say that on Survivor anymore. So when I say that, I'm old school, and I generally just mean everybody. But so thank you all for being here. Yeah, thank you all for being here tonight. And there was a lot of fun. We really enjoyed doing that. I think this is the favorite part of the Lurking for Legends. I enjoy interviewing different authors, but I really look forward to the first Tuesday of every month when we do the live reads and just let go and have a bit of fun with you guys. So thank you again for coming on here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks
for coming on.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to find, here we go. I've got this all scripted, but I can't find it. So our live read theme for June is historical dark fantasy, and we have 3 incredible authors lined up to share their stories with us. And one of them everybody knows, our co-host who started out with us originally when Lurking for Legends started with their inaugural show is Christy Stratos. She will be back with us again come May 24th, and she will be joining in on the live read in June. So we really look forward to having Christy back with us. And again, if you missed it at the top of the show, be sure to follow us on Twitch and YouTube, as Lurking for Legends is now live streaming to 3 different platforms in the hopes of growing our audience and helping give a bit more presence to the authors that we have on and get you guys a little bit more well known, because we all know as being independent authors, it's tough to get some traction sometimes when we're little fish in this great big ocean. So hopefully this will help give us a better reach. And next week on Lurking for Legends, we'll be speaking with science fiction author, techno thriller author Edward M. Lerner. Edward has written 16 science fiction novels, 5 of them in collaboration with Larry Niven. I'm sure most of us know who Larry Niven is, so that's going to be pretty exciting. And dozens of shorter works as well. And the 3rd and final novel in his Interstellar Net series won the inaugural Canopus Award for fiction, honoring excellence in interstellar writing. I've never heard of that, but I'm not a science fiction guy. So, while other stories have been nominated for Locus, Prometheus, and the Hugo Awards. So those are pretty big awards there for sure. So it sounds like it's going to be another great show. So again, thank you everybody for doing this. We really appreciate it. And
Thanks, everyone.
Until we meet again, take good care.
Thanks for having us.
Good night.
Thank you.